All right, we'll get to basketball later, though, because in my opinion, the biggest news in the sports world this week, Jon Bones Jones is back. He defeats Cyril Gane in the main event of the UFC 285 to claim the heavyweight title in the UFC division. Unofficially earns the moniker baddest man in the world. That doesn't quite have the same weight as usual with one Francis Ngannou existing. But nonetheless, he's back. He's at the top, and it really does not look like he's going anywhere anytime soon. Oh, Cyril Gane has been an insolvable puzzle for the heavyweight division for ever since he walked in. The karate and Muay Thai footwork and striking style that he executes with his size and frame and the power he has to punish you if you make a mistake trying to deal with that distance management has no one's been able to hit the guy. Like Ngannou, you can give the benefit of the doubt because he was on one knee, but even him, he looked like the friggin' incarnation of all terror, destroyer of worlds against everyone else and on one knee. So maybe just bracket that one out, but he couldn't touch him. No one else even got close. And Jones steamrolled him. He showed complete disrespect for the striking, walked right in, timed him perfectly to enter, explode, and initiate a clinch exchange, like so smoothly. You wondered how no one had done that before. And then he showed that he really has become a heavyweight. He just hauled Gane to the ground. There was some technique involved, the way he was able to get to the back. A sort of situation where like the most strength is effective against the least resistance, a lack of defensive awareness from Gane and being able to get up from being basically shrugged to the ground from behind and tripped. And then we knew that grappling advantage would be there. We didn't think he'd get to the ground so easily, and we thought Gane would have a bit more to put up in terms of resistance, especially after how his fight against Ngannou went last time and him having a year to prepare, or a year since then, and knowing Jones' his wrestling credentials. But he said himself he doesn't train outside of fight camp, so that limits the amount of time he prepared for this fight. And either he wasn't doing much or it wasn't enough outside of that fight to work on the holes in the ground game that Ngannou exposed in their fight. He basically bum scooches to the fence and then tries to get up, putting both his hands down and leaves his neck wide open while doing so, where it's far enough off the cage that Jones is able to cinch a guillotine. It was excellent technique, black belt jiu-jitsu level. But just at the highest level of mixed martial arts in title fights, you really don't expect the submissions to be presented that easily. And it does feel like a bit of a letdown. At the same time, though, Jones looked as good as ever in the short bit. And you wonder who in the division can withstand 5 minutes of that kind of grappling technique, knowing what Jones offers on the feet. And it's a pretty short list. The only guy who remotely you feel like has a chance to do both the striking and the grappling and make it competitive with Jones, or at least not let Jones dictate totally how and where the fight happens, is Stipe Miocic. And that seems to be the fight that's going to happen, International Fight Week. But it's not ideal. Like Stipe hasn't fought in 3 years. The last time he did fight, he got knocked out. So he's a bit undeserving, and we haven't seen him recently. So it's not the fight it was 3 years ago after Stipe's closing out the trilogy with Cormier, where we saw the striking, the grappling much more recently. I do think in his loss against Ngannou, it was a mix of just explosive athletic power and sheer size that made Ngannou a really huge problem for an undersized Stipe. So Miocic's head time, he's probably going to come in bigger when he fights Jones. He will have to deal with a frame and reach disadvantage that most of Jones's opponents have had to deal with, but he'll have more power to make up for that, and he's the best to ever do it at heavyweight. So you think if anyone could solve the puzzle, it would be him. You just don't really know what condition and state he's going to be in going into the fight. And north of 40, it feels like the odds go down. It is heavyweight, and that's the division where longevity is the longest. This isn't going to be a fight that's decided by speed. That part of Jones's game, but not the same way like it is for an Ngannou. So it's an interesting fight for sure. Just it was terrifying. And after Stipe, like no one can do both. Curtis Blades can wrestle. Some other guys in the division can strike, but it's hard to feel like they're going to be able to choose where the fight happens. We don't even know if Stipe will be. Like he was able to deal with DC's grappling, but he had the size advantage on DC, and how that might look when Jones tries to implement it, we really don't know. He'll certainly be the favorite, and it's just a question of surviving all of God's tests for Jones and seeing how many times he can walk into the octagon. But he has a chance here in the heavyweight division to really stamp the end of a crazy, crazy career. And other than that, there's no obvious easy challenge for him. It's hard to know what exactly the future holds.